All right, scholars, thank you for being here. Antonio and Dimitra could not make it, but I hope we can all learn something. So yeah, we're thinking about AI here in teaching. AI can be used for a lot of things, creating lesson plans, creating slides. We're going to be thinking specifically about giving feedback and then feedback on essay type assessments, where it's very costly for a human to give a lot of feedback to a lot of students. In this type of context, AI is very appealing because it's this essentially zero cost, or it could be zero cost to the user, and can very quickly give a lot of feedback. And there's obviously pluses and minuses here. Doug was kind of alluding to this. Maybe the feedback won't be aligned with what the teacher was looking for. Maybe the AI will misunderstand what the purpose is. And we're going to be specifically thinking about this at kind of a higher level. So trying to help students make the transition from being students to being researchers. So we're going to be looking at referee reports, which are going to require, understanding, recent literature, understanding the type of question that's being asked and critically thinking about it, thinking about the methods that are used. And this is the type of high level task that maybe at present AI has not yet surpassed humans. So we're just kind of asking, is it a complement or a substitute for humans? And the big thing we're doing here is we have this blinded experiment where students are going to be submitting a referee report as a PDF, and then they're going to get two feedback documents, not disclosing the source, just comments on that feedback, comments on that referee report, one from a human and one from AI. So we are not the first to ask this type of question. It's been studied in several lower level tasks you can see in those first two bullet points. One thing we had to keep in mind, and I think Doug alluded to this specifically, students do not like AI feedback when they know it's from AI. The reason being they're saying, like, well, we're paying tuition to learn from professors. We want feedback from the professor. So that is kind of the motivation, or one of the motivations for blinding it and not having students know the sources. Kind of the contribution we have here is we think the setting is particularly interesting. We're now thinking about this higher level of critical thinking, referee reports, developing new research ideas. And we think this is a meaningful contribution, even though this type of question has been asked before. So I'll give a little bit more detail on how the experiment ran in a couple of slides, but just to kind of show the overall results. Human feedback is perceived as better on average. You can see there 4.5 versus 3.6 out of 5. But the AI feedback is not perceived poorly. And in the context that it's very low cost to create, it is probably still of value here. A metric I care about is the fraction of students giving 4 or 5 out of 5. So you can see the performance of humans and AI there. We then asked questions for specific criteria that the feedbacks were superior on. The human feedback was preferred in most things. So it's going to be in an econometrics course. And a lot of the human comments were trying to help students learn econometric methods and think about how those methods were used in the paper. The AI, it was not significant, but did get slightly higher average performance in having a criteria-based evaluation. So, having some structure or some rubric that is being followed. AI can be more consistent, perhaps. And then, of course, having a supportive tone. I don't think that'll surprise anybody that AI is going to win on that. We asked students 1 to 5, do you perceive these feedbacks as complementary? And 60% of students gave either 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. So that we see as a pretty good sign for AI, even if it is not maybe surpassing humans, at least at present, in giving feedback. The thing that we actually found most interesting is something we can't really put numbers on, though. So we found some specific examples where a student made a comment or some critique of a paper that was a little imprecise. And as a teacher, as a human, that's an opportunity to correct this misunderstanding. Whereas a thing about the AI is often the AI will just find something positive can say and praise the good part of that comment. So I know I only have 10 minutes. I will make sure I get to at least one specific example of that before the 10 minutes ends. Also, at this time, I think an obvious maybe attack of our method is, well, the type of AI feedback that's generated depends on how you prompt AI. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I'll show how we prompted AI on the next couple of slides. We did play around with other ways of prompting AI and trying to get AI to notice mistakes a little more. This third bullet point tended to still be true, though. We made a few legitimate attempts, and it just seemed to kind of be a thematic problem. And just the big takeaway we had is right now, at least at this higher level, AI feedback has not surpassed humans, but it still is perceived as maybe complementing the human feedback a little bit. All right, so the course has the most ambiguous name of all time, quantitative economics. It's effectively an applied econometrics course. So we teach methods in lecture, and then students write referee reports 5 over the 11 weeks. Those referee reports were submitted as PDFs, and then comments were made on that by a human and then by Gemini AI and given right back to the students with no source signal, just they're called feedback A and feedback B. I'll show a picture of this in 2 slides from now. And then we asked students to fill out a survey, rating usefulness and comparing them. We got 55 responses out of 140, so it was decent, but not incredible. Okay, I know there's a lot of text on the slide, I'm sorry. This is the prompt we gave Gemini. So I'll just briefly, mention this. So he said, you're a professor, you're teaching econometrics, you're going to be giving feedback on a referee report. We gave it the paper, we gave it the student's referee report, and maybe the bottom paragraph here is most relevant. We tell the AI, provide constructive feedback, helping them understand strengths and areas for improvement. So we felt like this was a pretty nice baseline comparison. Just tell the AI, here's the assignment, give feedback on it. We feel like comparing human feedback to feedback generated from AI in that context is a pretty natural starting point comparison. And maybe a path for future research is how to optimally prompt AI. But we feel like optimally prompting AI is kind of a different question from what we're looking at. Just to show you what the feedbacks look like. So the left here and the right, these are the exact same referee reports submitted by the student, but the left has comments made by the human, and the right is comments made by Gemini AI. So really the only thing I want to say on this slide is just by looking at the documents, it is not supposed to signal what the sources of the feedback are. And then the survey also made no reference to the sources of the feedback. So we just called them feedback A, feedback B. We asked students which was better in certain dimensions. Students could say A, B, or roughly comparable. Got a couple of minutes left. Okay. So just to briefly show the response to how useful the feedback were, you can see here the human feedback has a higher average. I mentioned this already. Than the AI, and to show some overlaid histograms. The human feedback was much more likely to be perceived as 5 out of 5. The AI, 4 or 5 out of 5, was still fairly common. And then we asked students, how much do you agree with the statement that they were more useful together compared to if they just got 1? And 60% of those responses are either 4 or 5 out of 5, which is pretty good. Okay, I do want to try to stick to 10 minutes. So I'm going to jump ahead to an example where the AI praised an imprecise comment by a student. So Ashton Felter and Urata, if you don't know this paper, they have panel data on every McDonald's in the US, and the regressor, the treatment is whatever minimum wage is binding. So at the local level, the state level, or the federal level. And the outcome is the price of the Big Mac at that McDonald's or the wage paid to the crew. And then they also have fixed effects for each McDonald's and fixed effects for each year, each time period. So this is a case where there's always a treatment for every observation at every time period. The minimum wage, there's always a minimum wage. And there was this recent diff and diff revolution literature, which was relevant for settings where there's staggered adoption of a treatment. So the paper that students are writing a referee report on does not have staggered adoption. That Sun and Abraham, Callaway Santana, those types of papers are not relevant here. A student in their referee report mistakenly said, oh, this is a case where that Sun and Abraham, Callaway Santana type of thing needs to be addressed. And as a human instructor, this is a teaching opportunity to clarify to the student, well, actually, it's good that you know that paper, but it's not relevant here. So the feedback from the human is able to identify that mistake.
Michael, if you could conclude now.
Yeah, I'll get to it. And then in contrast, the AI feedback just is excellent. You made a highly pertinent critique. So we tried to play around prompting AI other ways. Sometimes the AI completely ignored this and didn't give feedback at all on that comment. And sometimes it made a comment similar to this one. It just seemed to be kind of a persistent problem. So just to conclude very quickly, I will say, a couple of things that could be fixed is maybe the AI could be given the lecture or slides or some material from the lecture and told to make comments based on that, or to somehow instruct the AI a little better, like first find a set of critiques, then check if the humans made those critiques in their referee reports. And I will stop it there. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael, for keeping up with the time. Um, we've got a few questions here. One was raised by Param and seconded by a number of people, which is basically wondering whether all this work we're doing with AI and assessment is actually helping us improve in terms of our pedagogy, because it's forcing us to look at marking grids. It's often, forcing us to look at assessment and feedback in a deeper way. Do you think there's anything in that, or what were your thoughts?
So the question is if AI is helping us create better rubrics.
Yeah, and we pay more attention to it as well because we're using those rubrics to train the AI. So we have to think about the rubrics a bit more in depth than before.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed sometimes I've asked AI for advice on how to mark things, and it'll come up with criteria to give feedback on that I hadn't even considered. I definitely think that's important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Um, Doug is asking a question that you kind of raised already, whether if you would train the AI better, would this result still exist, or would it, you know,
yeah, we've thought about using like multiple AIs to create feedback documents, then having them critique each other and that type of thing. And we think that's probably a very fruitful path. We also have thought about replicating this experiment again, where some students get human feedback, some AI, and some get like AI feedback augmented by a human adjusting and making sure there's no mistakes. I think there's probably a lot of ways that AI feedback could be improved from the baseline thing that we did here. That's
okay.
probably definitely true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Claude asks a question that I'm also very, very interested in. I mean, what discussions do you have with your ethics GDPR
Yeah.
team about, using AI to provide feedback to students? And
We did get approval from the LSE relevant LSE group here. These were purely formative, so from that perspective, they weren't too worried about it. And then we always clarified, like to the students, if you got a comment and a feedback that you think maybe has a bit of a mistake or something, you can definitely come to office hours and clarify it. And they
oh,
felt like that was sufficient, especially because it's formative and it wasn't hurting their mark.
so were students told about the experiment that you were
But yeah,
doing?
well, I mean, we told them, all we said was you're going to be getting two sources of feedback on each thing. We didn't say what the sources were at all. I
Okay.
didn't even say I was one of the sources, but it was probably obvious I was one of them. Um, yeah.
Okay. I think I need to have an offline chat with you because I'm not sure my institution would be so welcoming. Um, okay. Well, I think we don't have any more questions. One last question from Tim. I'm trying to work out the general level of appetite to have AI grade your students. I mean, how did the students respond to when they did find out it was an AI giving them feedback? You kind of alluded to this, but
What was their reaction when they learned it was AI? It
yeah,
was kind of like, oh, that explains why it wasn't as good, kind of,
okay.
is what they said.
And they didn't do like, I'm paying lots of money for my fees and I'm getting AI to do the work of a professor comment.
Well, no, because I told them at the very end, when we had gathered all the data, I told them feedback A was me, the human feedback B was Gemini AI. And because they knew they were getting feedback from me, I don't think they were upset about that.
Okay. And actually, Tim was trying to talk about staff. How is the appetite among staff at LSE from using AI for feedback?
I think people at LSC are very cautiously guarded against using AI to give feedback. I don't think we've yet been convinced that it's surpassed humans in quality.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But that might change soon, right?
AI keeps getting better, so
Yeah.
probably.
Okay. I'm trying to read Parama's last comment. I'm not sure if there's a question there. Um,
No
okay. So
question. Just to say that hopefully if the LSE's done it, it means everyone else saying no is possibly overreach.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Michael. I think we exhausted the questions. That was a really interesting talk. I really enjoyed that. We're next going to pass on to Tim.